I saved up for nearly 2 years to surprise my parents with a 21,000 luxury fishing trip to Alaska for their 40th anniversary. Me, them, and my brother, Ryan. I handled everything. Charter flights, ocean view cabins, gourmet meals, guided excursions. Every detail, from the itinerary to the welcome packages, was planned down to the smallest detail. I thought it was the kind of gift they deserved, and I couldn't wait to see their reactions. I broke the news at a Father's Day barbecue, slipping printed itineraries inside fishing-themed cards. My dad, who usually didn't give out compliments unless they were earned, gave me a rare nod of approval. My mom teared up, overwhelmed by the gesture. Ryan looked stunned, like he couldn't process what I was saying. It felt like a perfect moment, until Shelby, his girlfriend, showed up late with store-bought potato salad and sat down next to us. She noticed the cards almost immediately. She smiled that sweet, too-wide grin of hers and leaned into my dad, asking a bunch of questions about the trip. She wasn't invited, but it didn't seem to faze her. That smile, the way she seemed to worm her way into the conversation, put me on edge. I didn't know how bad it would get, but I had a bad feeling about it. I was right. Later, at dinner, Shelby casually asked my mom what she should pack for Alaska. My stomach dropped. Everyone froze. I explained the trip was for 4 people: me, Ryan, Mom, and Dad. It had been booked and paid for. My dad stirred his sweet tea and said, maybe it was time we started including Shelby in things. I said it would mean reshuffling everything. The bookings were tight and the trip was expensive. Ryan mumbled that Shelby had never seen the ocean, that it would mean the world to her. My mom surprisingly backed him up, saying it was my gift, but Dad added that I could easily swing it, like it was nothing. Shelby sat back with that same smile, like it was already decided. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My gift turned into an obligation. I tried to argue, but it felt like no one was listening. They were too caught up in Shelby's charm. That night, I went to bed knowing the trip wasn't going to be the celebration I had planned. I just didn't know how much worse it was going to get. I'd been the reliable one all my life. Steady job in logistics, truck paid off, helped Dad patch the roof last fall. No thanks needed. I never asked for credit, just did what needed to be done. Ryan, on the other hand, was the opposite. He was 38, still bounced between warehouse gigs, charm first, responsibility later. Dad always gave him the benefit of the doubt, like Ryan's smile could make up for the fact that he never followed through on anything. I covered for him a lot. When COVID hit, I wired him $1,500 to cover rent. No payback, no mention of it after. I didn't expect anything in return. I just didn't want him to get screwed. But deep down, I felt like I was being taken for granted. It wasn't the first time, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. Then Shelby popped up, smiled too hard, stayed too long, asked too much. At first I figured it was just another one of Ryan's flings. She was pretty, and that was all I thought she had going for her. But she wormed her way in fast. After 2 months, she was calling my folks Ma and Pops. They ate it up. Maybe it was because she reminded them of someone younger, someone more carefree, someone who still knew how to play the part of a perfect girlfriend. But I saw right through it. I kept my head down, tried to keep the peace, and figured it would blow over like the rest of his relationships. I didn't realize she was playing a longer game. She wasn't here for the short term. She wasn't here just for Ryan. She was here to stay, and that scared the hell out of me. I could see it in the way she acted around them, how she got my mom to trust her so easily. I wasn't sure what the angle was yet, but I could feel it. The slow creep of someone pushing their way into my family. One night, I found myself watching them at dinner. Ryan, laughing like he was a kid again. Shelby sitting a little too close to my dad, talking about trips she'd been on, acting like she belonged there, like she was part of the family. It pissed me off. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself it was just another phase. But it didn't feel like a phase anymore. Not with Shelby, not with the way she acted, the way she fit in too easily. She wasn't just taking Ryan away from me. She was taking my parents too. It wasn't about love or family or whatever they told themselves. It was about control, about her being the center of attention, about her rewriting the narrative in a way that kept Ryan in the background, where he was most comfortable. I wasn't sure if she knew she was doing it, or if she was just that good at manipulating everything around her. Either way, I could feel the shift, and I didn't know how to stop it. But I had to admit, I was scared. scared that Ryan would fall for it completely, scared my parents would let her take the lead in everything, and that I'd be left holding the bag. I was the one who'd always been reliable, always taken care of things. But now, I was starting to wonder if that was ever going to be enough. At Sunday dinner, I could feel the tension in the air before Shelby even opened her mouth. She was sitting there, half focused on her plate of meatloaf, but her eyes kept darting to my mom like she was waiting for her moment. Then, it came. "So, Mom," Shelby said, a little too sweetly, "what do you think I should pack for Alaska?" Everyone froze. My fork hung in the air, and I could practically hear the wheels turning in my head. This wasn't a casual question. She knew exactly what she was doing. I set my fork down slowly and looked at my parents. I cleared my throat. "The trip's already planned and paid for, Shelby. It's for 4 people. Me, Ryan, Mom, and Dad." My voice was steady, but inside, I felt my blood starting to heat up. There was a long pause. Then, Dad stirred his sweet tea, his eyes shifting from me to her, like he was considering something. Finally, he spoke. "Maybe it's time we start including Shelby in things, don't you think?" I couldn't believe it. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my voice even. "Adding another person means reshuffling everything. The itinerary's tight and it's expensive, Dad. I already booked it all." Ryan shifted in his chair, looking uncomfortable. "Shelby's never seen the ocean before. I mean, it'd mean the world to her, you know?" That was the part that got to me. Ryan, always ready to push someone else's boundaries to make his life easier. I could already see how this was going to play out. Shelby would get what she wanted, and somehow, I'd be left holding the bag. I looked at my mom, hoping for some kind of backup, but she just blinked and then said, "Well, it's your gift, but..." She trailed off, almost like she was trying to hedge her bets, like she could already see the way the wind was blowing. "Maybe you could swing it." Dad jumped in before I could speak. "You're doing well, son. I'm sure you can make it work." My mom gave a quick nod, and Shelby, sitting back in her chair, looked completely unfazed, like it was already settled, like I was just some guy who'd made a suggestion, but now had no say in the matter. She smirked, the kind of look that said everything was going her way, and she knew it. I felt the heat rise in my chest, that sick feeling of being pushed aside. Shelby didn't even have the decency to pretend she was shocked by Dad's support. She just smiled, like she had already won. "Yeah, it'll be amazing," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. I couldn't breathe for a second. I was fighting to keep it together, but it was hard. How had we gotten here? I'd put in 2 years of planning, of saving, of making sure everything was perfect. And now they were acting like it wasn't a big deal, like it was just a given that Shelby would come along. I glanced over at Ryan, but he didn't meet my eyes. He never did when things were about to get uncomfortable. It was like he was already mentally checked out, leaving me to deal with whatever mess was about to unfold. "I'm not sure how much more I can juggle, Dad," I said, trying to stay calm. "This isn't just about adding someone to a list. There's a lot that goes into it." But even as the words came out, I knew it wasn't about logistics anymore. It was about who was in control, who got to be in the spotlight, and who was left on the outside. Dad didn't seem to hear me. He just looked over at Shelby with that damn proud smile of his, like he'd just made the right call. Shelby leaned forward, reaching for the breadbasket, and I could see it in her face. She'd already decided. This was no longer my trip. It wasn't even my family anymore. A month before the trip, my phone rang. It was Dad. I could tell by the way he said my name that something was off. "We've decided Shelby should take your spot." I don't know what I expected, but it sure wasn't that. I paused, letting the words sink in. "Are you serious?" "Yeah," he said, no hesitation in his voice. "You've seen Alaska before. Shelby hasn't. It'd be more special for her." The anger hit like a freight train, but I tried to stay calm. "I've planned and paid for the whole thing, Dad. Every detail. It's for 4 people. Me, you, Mom, and Ryan. We talked about this. Look, I know, but Shelby's been good to us. It's the right thing to do. We'll cut you a check for your portion. Say $5,000. I felt like I was drowning. "You're telling me you're going to cancel my trip, the one I paid for, and give my spot to her?" Dad's voice softened, but the damage was already done. "It's just one trip. You can go somewhere else. You're doing well. It's not like you can't afford it." Ryan hadn't said a word. He was there, but silent, like he always was when things got uncomfortable. It was classic. Shelby's voice, though, cut through the background. She didn't even have to say anything. I could practically hear her smirking, knowing she'd won. "I'll send the check tomorrow," Dad said, like that would make it okay. Like the money could erase what they were doing. I wasn't sure if I could speak without snapping. "You're not even going to try to make this right?" There was a long pause on the other end. "I'm sorry you're upset, but this is what we're doing. You'll be fine." The call ended. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't have it in me. I hung up and just stared at my phone for a while. I don't know how long. I couldn't feel my hands. The fury was building, but something else was creeping in too. Something colder. I was shaking, but I didn't want to let it out. I went outside for a walk to clear my head, but the fury didn't go away. The message was clear. I was useful, not valued. I had worked so hard to give them something special, and now it was being taken away, just like that. All that effort, all that time spent planning was worth less than Shelby's smile. I made it a few blocks before I turned around. My chest was tight, my head spinning. I thought I might break something, but the only thing that broke was me. I couldn't do it. I couldn't keep fighting for a place at that table. When I got home, I didn't even want to look at my phone. But when I saw the text from Ryan, I knew I'd have to face him. He was trying to keep things light, like always. "You good?" the message said. I didn't reply. The worst part wasn't that they were taking the trip away from me. It wasn't even that Shelby had wormed her way into our family like this. It was that Ryan didn't even care enough to take my side. And Dad? He didn't even see what he was doing. I spent the rest of the night fuming, but it didn't make anything better. The hole they left in me didn't close. I was done being the reliable one, done being the one who was always expected to show up, even if no one ever cared if I stayed or left. The morning after the call, I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to my heart pound in my ears. I knew I needed to do something. I had the power to change it. They didn't realize that. I called the outfitter first thing. Everything was in my name. I still had control, at least over that part. I felt a strange calm as I made the adjustments. "Hi, I need to make some changes to my booking," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. They were professional, no questions asked. I switched the charter flights from premium to coach. I couldn't stomach the idea of them flying in luxury when they'd toss me aside. I canceled the lodge reservation and rebooked a budget motel 40 minutes from the marina. They didn't need 5-star comfort, not after what they'd done. I canceled the guided fishing trips and replaced them with basic rentals. Nothing special, nothing that would set them apart from any other group of tourists. No crab boil, no private boat. I could hear their disappointed sighs already. And then, just to seal it, I booked myself a solo trip to Montana. Fly fishing, quiet mornings, a real break. I didn't need the drama. I didn't need them. I needed peace. I left everything else in place. The dates, the flights, the marina, all of it. I stripped the luxury from the package they'd kicked me out of and left them with a cheap, bland version of what I had originally planned. They could have their trip, but it wouldn't be the one I had imagined for them. I wasn't going to tell them a word. They'd figure it out on their own. For the next couple of weeks, I stayed quiet. I didn't pick up the phone when they called. I didn't respond to their texts. I kept my focus on my own trip, letting the slow burn of resentment die down as I shifted my attention to something else, something that was mine. I wasn't going to fight them anymore. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't need to. They'd made their choice, and I had mine. I wasn't their backup plan. I wasn't the one they could rely on just because they knew I'd always come through. The thing was, I wasn't angry anymore, not in the way I had been. The more I adjusted the trip, the more I felt a weird sense of relief. I wasn't going to let them ruin something I had worked so hard for. And when it was done, when I had everything lined up exactly how I wanted it, I sat back and just waited. I didn't feel the need to say a word. They'd come to me when they figured it out. And when they did, maybe, just maybe, they'd realize exactly what they'd lost. I knew their flight time. I could almost picture them on the plane, talking about how amazing this trip was going to be. I figured they'd show up expecting champagne, cold towels, someone greeting them at the airport with a sign. I wasn't sure how long it would take them to figure out what had really happened. But when they did, it was going to hit hard. The phone rang. It was Dad. "Why are our tickets economy?" he asked, his voice already tight with frustration. "Because you gave away my seat," I said, calm but firm. "And gifts once given belong to the recipient, remember?" There was a long pause. Then he exploded. "What the hell is wrong with you? You're being petty, and this is ridiculous. Do you have any idea what you've done? I'm not the one who gave away my spot, Dad, I said, voice low, holding my ground. I'm not the one who decided to cancel my trip and invite someone else in my place. But I guess it's easier to blame me than look at what you've done. I hung up before he could say anything else. I didn't need to hear his excuses. I already knew where this was going. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ryan. "You're unbelievable." I didn't even bother responding. There was nothing left to say to him. He'd already made his choice. Shelby had already made hers. I stayed quiet the rest of the day. I didn't care what they thought of me anymore. The truth was, I had already made my peace with it. Let them figure it out on their own. Let them realize the lodge was a motor inn. Let them find out crab night was off the table. The private boat was gone too. It was just a regular fishing trip now, not the one I'd dreamed up. I hadn't even felt the need to call and warn them. They'd be fine. They had Shelby now. They didn't need me. Later that evening, I saw Shelby's post on Facebook. The picture hit me like a punch in the gut. She was standing under flickering motel lights, her neon hoodie glowing bright against the dull, cheap backdrop. "Expectations versus reality," the caption read. I stared at the photo for a while. She wasn't even trying to hide the fact that she was mocking them, the fake forced smile in the picture. It wasn't a joke to her. It was a way to get back at me, to show that she'd won. She had successfully driven a wedge between me and my family, and she was taking a victory lap. I knew that post would only make it worse for them. It wasn't just a jab at me anymore. It was a public statement. They could ignore it, but the damage was done. I closed the app, set my phone down, and took a deep breath. It didn't sting anymore. I had already made my decision. What they thought of me didn't matter. I wasn't the one who had sold out. I wasn't the one who'd traded family for convenience. I'd made my peace with it. Now it was their turn. Day 4 of their trip, I got a voicemail from Dad. His voice was quieter than usual, almost like he wasn't sure what to say. "I saw the original itinerary," he began. "I didn't know how much you put into it. I messed up. We did. You didn't deserve that." I let the words hang in the air for a while before I hit delete. I didn't want to hear it. It wasn't enough, not yet. The apology felt hollow, like he was only sorry because he had to be. I wasn't ready to forgive him. Not then, not after everything. Then came the message from Mom, a couple of hours later. It was a long one. She told me that Shelby had whined the whole time, how she was never satisfied, how everything seemed to fall apart without me there. "Ryan and Shelby are barely talking," she wrote. "Without you here, it just feels like a trip, not a celebration." I didn't know what to feel when I read that. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, like it was proof they were starting to see things my way. But there was another part of me, the part I hated, that still wanted to be part of it, that wanted things to go back to how they were before. But they couldn't. Not now. A week later, Ryan called. I didn't pick up at first, but then I figured it'd be a quick, "Hey, you're still mad?" kind of thing. I didn't expect much. "Yeah," I said when I finally answered. "You were right," he muttered. "I'm sorry." His words hung in the air, awkward and quiet. I didn't know what to say to that. It wasn't like I could just say, "It's fine," because it wasn't fine. It wasn't even close to fine. He hadn't said a word to me the entire time this was happening, and now he was calling me, a week too late, to apologize for what? For not sticking up for me? For letting Shelby win? "I don't know what you want me to say," I finally said. "You already made your choice, Ryan, and I made mine. What's done is done." There was a long pause before he spoke again. I didn't get it. I thought you'd be okay with it, but I see now. I get it." "Good," I said, then hung up without another word. I didn't want to hear any more apologies from him. He'd never been the one to take responsibility for anything, and I wasn't about to let him off the hook just because he finally woke up. The next voicemail I got was from Shelby. I let it sit for a few hours before I played it. Her voice was drenched in that fake sweetness that I'd come to hate. "You ruined my first real vacation," she said, her tone sharp despite the facade. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for you to be so petty. If you just let it go, we could have all had a good time. But no, you had to mess it up. Just great job." I didn't even bother responding. I blocked her number. I didn't need to hear anything else she had to say. No more pretending, no more guilt trips, no more letting them use me when it suited them. They'd made their choice, and now they were dealing with the fallout. I wasn't the one who had to fix it, not anymore. I met Dad at a diner a couple of days after the calls and messages. He'd suggested it, and for some reason, I agreed. Maybe I was tired of the silence, or maybe I just needed to see where this was going to go. He was already there when I walked in, sitting at a corner booth, picking at his coffee cup. When he saw me, he sat up straighter, like he wasn't sure what kind of reception he was going to get. He looked older somehow, worn down, like he had a weight on his shoulders he hadn't had before. "Hey," he said, his voice a little shaky. I slid into the booth, keeping some space between us. Neither of us spoke at first, just let the silence settle. He looked like he wanted to say something, but kept hesitating. Finally, he spoke, almost quietly. "I've been thinking about everything, about what happened with you in the trip. You were right about a lot of it. I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know if I was ready for it either." "You mean you actually see it?" He looked down at his hands. "I leaned on you because you could handle it. I spoiled Ryan because he couldn't." He shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping. "It's easier to rely on the one who always steps up. Easier to ignore the one who doesn't need anything, even when he's the one who's always there." I felt my chest tighten. There it was, the truth I'd been waiting to hear. So, I was punished for being responsible? That's what it always felt like. Dad's eyes met mine, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something there, something real. "That's fair," he said, his voice rough. "I can't deny that. I hated myself for it, but it was easier to let Ryan get away with everything. I should have been harder on him, but I didn't know how." He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "I hate that it took this, the trip, everything, to make me see it. But you didn't deserve that. I messed up. We both did." I didn't say anything for a while. The words were stuck in my throat. I couldn't even process how it felt to hear him admit it. All these years of being the steady one, the reliable one, the one who never asked for anything. It was like I'd been invisible, or worse, taken for granted. And now, here he was, finally owning up to it. I shook my head. "I don't know what to do with that, Dad. I don't know how to fix it." Dad sighed and leaned back in his seat. "You don't have to fix anything, but we can start over. I can't change the past. But maybe we can get it right now." We didn't hug it out. It wasn't one of those moments where everything was suddenly better, but for the first time in 20 years, we'd had an honest conversation, a real one, and that was something I hadn't thought I'd ever get. As I was leaving the diner, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. "Just so you know, I told your father to stop interrupting you at dinner last night. He was rude and you deserve to finish your point." I smiled a little. That was new too. Mom had always been the peacemaker, but now she was starting to speak up. It felt like a small shift, but it was one I appreciated. Maybe things were changing, just a little. I wasn't sure where it would go from here, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't holding everything together by myself. 2 weeks after their trip, Ryan called. I didn't expect it, but when I picked up, I could tell something had changed in his voice. It wasn't the usual deflection or avoidance. "I broke up with Shelby," he said, his words coming out quickly, like he'd been holding them back. I blinked, caught off guard. "What? Why?" "I finally saw the strings," he muttered, a bitter edge to his tone. "Everything she did was calculated. I should have seen it sooner, but I didn't." I didn't know what to say. Part of me was relieved, like he'd finally woken up to the manipulation that had been so obvious to me from the start. But another part of me felt sad. Sad for him, for the time he'd wasted, for the mess she'd left behind. "She tried to keep the ring," he added. "I let her keep it. Cheap lesson, I guess." I couldn't help but laugh, though it was more out of disbelief than humor. "Well, at least you figured it out before it got worse." Ryan sighed. "Yeah, and I don't know, man. I guess I'm sorry. I've been a shithead. You were right about everything. About her, about how I've been. I just never saw it." I didn't know what to say to that either. "It's not like I wanted to be right," I said, the words coming out softer than I meant them to. "But you're here now, so just don't make the same mistakes again." He paused before answering. "I won't. I know I've fucked up a lot, but I'm working steady now. Got a job I'm sticking with, paying my own bills." There was a slight pause, and then he added almost sheepishly, "I just wanted to thank you for the times you helped me out." I wasn't sure how to respond. It felt strange hearing him say that, like he was starting to take responsibility for his own life in a way he hadn't before. "You don't need to thank me for that." I just did what I thought was right. There was another awkward silence before he spoke again, his voice quieter this time. I'll figure it out, man. I will. Thanks. Really? I didn't know if he meant it or if he just felt guilty, but I couldn't hang on to that weight anymore. Not his guilt, not his excuses. After that conversation, I started setting real boundaries. No more last-minute loans. No more playing the role of the safety net every time Ryan made a mess of his life. It felt freeing, though it also made me uncomfortable at first. Saying no didn't come naturally, but I had to learn how to do it. I wasn't responsible for everyone's problems, and I wasn't going to let them lean on me just because I could handle it. I also took a hard look at why I overgave, why I kept putting everyone else's needs ahead of mine. It wasn't just about being the dependable one. It was about the guilt I carried, about being afraid to say no, about needing their approval. It took me a while to admit that to myself, so I started therapy. I'd thought about it before, but now it felt necessary. I needed help untangling all the things that had kept me stuck in this role I'd played for so long. It wasn't easy. It wasn't an overnight fix, but it was a start. I still love my family, I always would, but for the first time, I love myself just as much. I wasn't their backup anymore. I wasn't the one who fixed things when they broke, and that felt like freedom. A year later, we spent my parents' 41st anniversary at a rented cabin by Lake Superior. No grand plans, no over-the-top surprises. Just a small, quiet celebration. Burgers on the grill, beers in hand, and a simple sheet cake my mom made from scratch. Ryan brought cards, the kind with cheesy jokes and awkward pictures. The kind that only felt right because we were all there together. Dad grilled, flipping patties and making small talk, like everything was normal. Mom kept busy in the kitchen, arranging the cake with candles. We didn't talk about the past, not once. Not about Alaska, not about what happened the year before. The silence was comfortable, not heavy. We split the cost of everything. I didn't pick up the tab for all of it, and that felt good. For once, I wasn't the one carrying everything. We all chipped in, like it was just another part of being a family, no expectations hanging over us. The best part? There was no drama, not a single raised voice, no guilt trips, no undercurrents of resentment, just real time spent together. For once, I wasn't the fallback. I wasn't the one everyone leaned on when they didn't feel like figuring things out themselves. I wasn't the responsible one just because I could be. I was just family. It felt like something had finally shifted. They listened when I spoke. No interrupting, no over-talking me to fill the silence. For the first time in a long time, it felt like they actually heard me. And for the first time, I felt like I was part of something where I didn't have to prove myself. I didn't need to be the one who held everything together. I could just be me. I didn't expect to get everything back after that trip. I didn't need to. What I had now felt real, and that was enough. I still go fishing every fall, alone sometimes. I've made peace with it. I've learned to be okay with being by myself, with the quiet. And sometimes it's better that way. Alone doesn't mean lonely. It just means I get to do things on my terms. And for once, that felt like freedom.